Hello. This is going to be a sort of continuation of my last video. I'm making it now because, well, my family has descended upon me for the holidays and I'm not sure when I'll be able to make another video. It's not that I'll run out of ideas, I certainly won't, or it's not that they won't, let's get desk settled. It's not that they won't let me make a video. It's just that they make so much damn noise. You'll probably be able to hear some of them racing about downstairs right now. And, well, finding a quiet place might be a bit of a problem. As a matter of fact, I might have to end up locking myself in the attic. So if in my next video I'm sitting in some sort of dark space illuminating my face with a torch, you'll know what happened. Anyway, so this is a sort of continuation of the last video I made, and it mops up some points which I didn't get a chance to put into that one because it would have made it go on for way too long. A while ago, I made a video about Tommy Robinson's bid to run in the European elections. I said at the time that I didn't think he stood much of a chance, and this wasn't because I thought he was unpopular, but because his constituency was spread out among thousands, well, hundreds of thousands of people all over the country, indeed all over the world. So although he was popular globally, his voter base wasn't concentrated in the area in which he was running. And as it turns out, I was correct. And the same thing happened to the campaigns of Carl Benjamin and Mark Meechan. That's Sargon of Akkad and Count Dankula to you and me. They too had hundreds of thousands of followers on their channels. I think maybe in the case of Benjamin it might have amounted to millions. But it doesn't matter how many thousands you have in Canada. With all due respect to you Canadians, if you're not living in southwest England and you can't vote there, and also same thing for Mark Meechan in Scotland. It's sort of ironic really, because if Labour had studied those guys, they would have learnt something. But they didn't learn because they didn't even want to acknowledge the existence of such people as Benjamin and Meechan. And so they were unable to learn the lessons of those failed attempts. All those economically illiterate students who turned out on the streets to knock on doors, as a voting base, they were spread out all over the place. They may have formed some sort of a nebulous constituency, but they weren't actually in a constituency. So let's see what happened to the real constituency. You see, I noticed something very interesting in an interview I saw with a focus group of working class northerners, so far as I remember, who were being asked which way they intended to vote. This was, probably a couple of months ago. It wasn't a last minute thing. Labour had by that time come up with free broadband and more money to the National Health Service, which everyone promises anyway, a freeze on pension age, which is certainly a bone of contention, because there's been talk of people living longer, so we've got to put the pension age up, a free home care service for the elderly, a rise in the minimum wage, which again the Conservatives were going to do anyway, and a whole lot of green nonsense. A lot of what the manifesto said was indeed very worthy, very nice, really good stuff everyone would like. And I was astonished when a couple of those people in the focus group said the same thing. Who's going to pay for all of this? And said it loudly, and they weren't shouted down by the others. You see, in previous elections, even Conservatives didn't bring up the subject of who was going to pay. Bringing the impoliteness of money would have been electoral poison. They'd have been accused of being bean counters, putting money over humanity, not caring enough, stuff like that. I have to confess, I was quite astonished by that sort of realism from those sorts of voters, because as a general rule, it's been completely absent from British politics as far as I can remember. The other thing that hit me was that those people, while they weren't actually saying they were going to vote Conservative, were certainly voicing enough concern about Labour that you got the idea that they weren't going to be with Labour either. Now, these are traditional Labour voters, and by traditional, I mean just that. Their parents, their grandparents, their sisters and their mothers and their cousins and their aunts, even their great-grandparents wouldn't have voted any other way. But it seemed to me they had the feeling that they didn't need a Labour Party to defend their rights anymore. So they didn't feel that same loyalty to it anymore. It also meant it seemed that they considered their own circumstances weren't that bad. You know, they must have felt reasonably comfortable, which probably means that in some way jobs have returned to the areas in which they lived. And these people had adjusted away from the idea of mines and huge factories and started thinking of other sorts of work. Either that, or they'd realised, even if they were struggling financially, that socialism wasn't going to rescue them. I can't say exactly what it was, but it was obvious there was a difference in attitude. A looking away from the state for salvation. And I think that could be tied up with their attitudes to the EU, which has been seen as a sort of state salvation by the middle classes. And I think it's putting off the working classes from the whole idea of state salvation. What's got abroad among the working classes, so far as I can tell, is that there's a combination of the idea that the EU state is going to be oppressive and that the socialist state isn't going to care about them particularly much. Of course, they have had plenty of evidence that the Labour Party was concentrating on another type of constituency than themselves anyway. Labour were going for the young metropolitan types, the students, the middle class, aspirationals. One particular example just sticks in my mind. I don't know why more people didn't make more fun of it. Certainly the BBC let it slide. There's a TV programme called Question Time. And a little while ago, there were all these politicians or worthies sitting at a desk at the front and giving their ideas of how the world should be. And then there's an audience. And a member of the audience, who was a Remainer, got to speak. And she said, if we get out of the European Union, who's going to serve drinks in Starbucks? Or whatever local upmarket coffee shop she named. She said it with complete frankness, a complete unawareness of what she'd said. In other words, what she was saying was, where's she going to get her servants from if we couldn't import the grateful poor from Romania? I have little doubt that this is a Corbyn supporter, of course. But yeah, I am speculating in that. Now, back to that focus group. Those people had absorbed the idea that the Labour Party wasn't going to defend them because the Labour Party had decided it had another constituency. And that constituency, well, hang on, I'm going to put a sound effect in here. To talk about elephants in the room, those working class people in the north were also becoming aware that the Labour Party was demonstrably not defending them against another sort of Labour supporter to which the party was transferring its attention, namely the Pakistani Muslims. There's a high proportion of Pakistani Muslim presence in the Labour Party equation, and there are areas where Islam has become a politico-religious bloc, and it's concentrated in metropolitan places like Birmingham, London, Luton, Bradford, so on. It's my guess that Corbyn's obsession with Israel and Palestine, by the way, might have something to do with that. But whatever. What with the young activists and the Islamist element, the Labour top rank probably thought they had a grip on a whole lot of votes. But that's the beauty of our first past the post system. You see, the metropolitans were concentrated in the metropolitan areas. The clue is in the name. The Islamist types were also concentrated in their own little exclusive communities in the cities. So although the vote for Labour might have been overwhelming in some parts, for instance, the Tottenham incumbent Labour MP, David Lammy, got 35,000 votes as against 5,000 to the Conservatives. And Shabana Mahmood got 33,000 in Birmingham Ladywood, and somebody called Alex Sobel got 23,000 in Leeds North West, far outstripping the nearest next down. But however many votes each of them still got just one seat. Meanwhile, in the rest of the country, it didn't work out like that. So you can have as much of an Islamist or a Marxist vote as you want, but you're still restricted as to how many actual seats you're going to get in the House itself. Oh, and also, and this is pure speculation again on my part, I'm sure that there were many Hindu and Sikhs voting Conservative like crazy, because Hindus and Sikhs are in general very successful business people, and they aren't that sympathetic to socialism, I suppose, to start with. But that's apart from the fact that, yep, I'm going to put another sound effect there, yep. And that's apart from the fact that they could see what Labour was doing to the Jews and might have been a tiny bit concerned that they'd be next on the list. The net result was that Labour, their electoral strategy, indeed, the entire attitude of the Labour Party was a disastrous strategy, because actually Corbyn didn't have a constituency across the country. Just in a few university towns and some, as I said, metropolitan areas. So the big mistake the Labour Party made, I mean, apart from having Corbyn at their head, the strategic electoral mistake was to think that all those kids on Twitter were an electoral constituency. Now, they might have learnt that from the example of Tommy Robinson, Sargon of Akkad and Count Dankula. But they didn't. And this only goes to prove that when you unfriend, when you block, when you stick your fingers in your ears and go, when you shout people down, when you have the attitude that because they don't hold your political opinions, they're evil and you won't even think about them, let alone engage with them, you are not only not going to hear what you don't like, you are not only not going to learn about their philosophy and opinions, you're not even going to learn from their mistakes. So you not only stop hearing stuff you find uncomfortable, you stop hearing stuff that actually makes you a winner. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.